Welcome to the Sunder the Sky podcast. I am your host, Christopher Sky-Sunderer, here in my fortified bunker deep beneath the streets of Kent, Ohio. And I am still suffering from a head cold. It's just this time of year, I guess. But I am feeling much better after my ordeal at the hospital. So it's only been a couple of days since I recorded the last episode, and I wanted to go ahead and get something down today. Ever since I decided to go ahead and include the health stuff with Sunder the Sky, because I don't know when I'm going to be able to do my health vlog properly, the way I want to do it. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it a regular thing on Sunder the Sky. Last night, I dealt with, and am still dealing with today, one of my health issues. This one in particular is a mental health issue. I suffer from depression, anxiety, panic disorder, and bipolar depression. Okay? Now, just to clear some of these things up, the anxiety and the panic disorder are well controlled currently, though I am looking for alternatives to how to control them, because the way I initially discovered I had panic attacks was after going to the emergency room several times thinking I was having a heart attack. The symptoms are identical to a heart attack. The only thing missing is the pain shooting down your arm. And true to form, the medical professionals who saw me in the emergency room didn't diagnose it as that. They saw a guy who was grossly overweight, and they thought, well, maybe he is having palpitations. Maybe that is what this is. But my wife, who at the time was my fiance, suggested to me, maybe you're having panic attacks. And then, I saw a doctor about that. And they started me on Paxil. And I went from having 2 or 3 of these things a day down to nothing. I mean, I have 1 or 2 panic attacks a year now. Now, the reason I'm looking for alternative treatment is Paxil is what's called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, operating on the theory, and I believe the theory is correct, that in the brain there are, and this isn't theory, they know this much, there are serotonin glands. Serotonin is, I believe, a hormone, okay, but it's a chemical, it's a juice that the brain produces that is responsible for your feeling of well-being and contentment. Okay, when you're happy, your brain secretes a lot of serotonin, and that's what you're feeling. Well, each of these serotonin glands is in an enclosure with the gland at the top, and at the bottom, the serotonin receptor site, okay, which is a cluster of nerve endings that is attenuated to process the serotonin response in the brain, right? So when serotonin is secreted, it goes right down into the bottom of the little enclosure and hits the serotonin receptor site, right? Now you have a mechanism that causes the serotonin to be reuptaken. Okay, the gland basically sucks the serotonin back up off the receptor site. All right, that's if you perceive something dangerous or upsetting. Like you're feeling great, you're on top of the world, you round the corner and there's a tiger standing there waiting to pounce. The serotonin gets reuptaken off the receptor sites so that you feel anxious, nervous, and terrified as you're supposed to. That'll prompt action on your part. It's the fight or flight response, what you're actually feeling when you enter fight or flight. In addition to the adrenaline that gets secreted, the serotonin is reuptaken off the receptor sites. The glands suck the serotonin back up off the nerve clusters. All right? Now, someone with panic disorder, as the theory goes, their fight or flight response is on a hair trigger that goes off for no reason. Okay, or with even the slightest prompting. All of a sudden, boom, you're in fight or flight, and the serotonin glands suck the serotonin back up off your receptor sites, and you blow into fight or flight. You feel panic. The brain doesn't know all of that consciously. All the brain knows is suddenly you feel terrible and terrified. So what your brain does is it starts looking for excuses. Why am I feeling this? And then in a very real way, and it's hard to describe this to someone who doesn't suffer from it, okay? I wouldn't have believed this before I developed the condition. Every little ache and pain in your body, every little discomfort, things you're probably not even aware of until this happens, becomes evidence that you're dying. And you are overwhelmed with this feeling that you're about to die. It would happen to me more frequently when I was driving or when I was out in public. I remember whenever Amy and I, that's my ex-wife, we would used to go out for breakfast. Sometimes we'd go to Bob Evans, or sometimes we'd go to, Friendly's or something for dinner. But whenever we were out in public during this time, and this was just months before our wedding, okay, I would suddenly feel like, oh shit, something's going on. I'm not feeling right. I might be having a heart attack. I'm not, like, the thought that always went through my head is, I'm not close enough to the doors. They're not going to be able to get me out of here quick enough when the ambulance comes. And that just thundered through my mind. Okay, and it would happen when driving. And apparently, driving is a common trigger for it. I mean, and you kind of understand it. You're on a road and you've got all these huge machines moving all around you at dozens of miles per hour, and you're in a huge machine also moving. And, at any minute, anybody could swerve into you or something like that. So even though no one's consciously terrified of that when they're driving, subconsciously, it becomes a trigger. Paxil, as a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, stops that from happening. It stops the serotonin glands from slurping the serotonin back up off the receptor sites, and hence stops your panic attacks. And I've been on Paxil since 2006, so that's 13 years now. Now, the reason I want off of it, when I first got on Paxil, I didn't know that it was bad for you, but it apparently is. While it's preventing the panic attacks from happening, it's also worsening the physiological conditions in the brain that cause them in the first place. So if you ever go off Paxil, not only will you start having panic attacks again, but you'll have them more frequently and more powerfully than before. Okay? So you kind of get stuck on this stuff. And even just missing a few doses. I know early on it was tricky with our living situation to be able to get out and pick up prescriptions. I have a mail service now. Everything gets mailed to me. But back then, Amy and I were both really busy. We were both working. Amy was going to school. And I was working in an on-the-road sales job. I was selling insurance. Things just would get tough sometimes, and I would occasionally go without Paxil for a couple days. And I learned very quickly what a mistake that is. I didn't start having panic attacks, but I did start getting dizzy headaches that after a while, it's kind of like you get what they call the zaps, which is you're just, that feeling when you're dozing off and you starting to fall asleep and you doze and you feel like you slip and you jerk awake like, whoa. That starts happening to you while you're awake. All of a sudden, it's like there's an invisible man standing in front of you, and every once in a while, he slaps your forehead with the heel of his hand. It's like every once in a while, the whole world feels like it momentarily slips out from under you. And you're like, ugh, what was that? It's like that dizzy headache, because you're constantly, just dizzy. It's right up in the front of your head, right behind your eyes, that you feel this kind of dizziness. And every once in a while, it's like it sharpens to a point, and the whole world jerks. That's what happens when you go off Paxil for 2 days, okay? The idea of me just quitting Paxil cold turkey is not quite the appealing thought. But anyway, that's all that. That's the anxiety and the panic disorder. Now, I've suffered from depression for years and years and years. And my health physically has always been rocky ever since I was prepubescent, okay? And I kind of went into that last time. But as I was moving into my late 20s, early 30s, I was really getting to a point where things were getting physically difficult and eventually impossible. You cannot work door-to-door sales when you can barely walk 20 feet. You can't be climbing stairs to get to people who are no-shows. You can't, you just can't keep that lifestyle up. And I went to the company I was working for,
which was an insurance sales agency. We represented a lot of different insurance companies. And I said, is there something I can do from a desk? Can I just do phone sales? You know, why does this stuff have to always be done in person? I started to really question that. And there are companies now that do everything over the phone, insurance sales wise, right? But that didn't really exist, 15 years ago. And we were constantly being told by my doctor that I didn't have much time left. Okay? So Amy and I got married in fall of 2006. And by 2010, I was completely disabled. I mean, I could barely get up to go to the bathroom. I couldn't train anymore. I couldn't teach anymore. I certainly couldn't work anymore. And I was looking around for jobs I could have, you know. I even started scraping the bottom of the barrel with telemarketing jobs and stuff like that. And it was always like, well, yeah, we got a telemarketing job, but you got to climb 6 flights of stairs to get to it. Is that going to be okay? And I was like, well, no. I can't climb 1 flight of stairs. And it just got harder and harder. By 2010, right as I was becoming fully disabled, but before I had actually qualified for any disability benefits of any kind, she decided she was done and she left. The way I've just told that story paints her in a highly unfavorable light, and that's not my intention. She had her reasons for leaving, and I have come to understand those reasons now. I don't like the way she went about it. I've talked to lots of people who've been divorced, men and women, and it's unanimous among them that this is just how women leave a relationship. They get themselves good and ready, they move on, and then they tell the guy, always with the same excuse. I thought you knew something was wrong, you know, and it's like, it's just one of those things that men and women's brains just work differently in this regard. When I ask, are you okay? And you say, yeah, I'm fine. Is anything wrong? No, I'm fine. See, men aren't psychic the way women think they are. And if you tell me everything's fine, I interpret that to mean everything's fine. Okay? And I think you see this reflected when men get sick and the women act like men turn into crying babies when they're sick. It's because when we feel something, we tell you about it. Okay? And there's a lot of other things behind this. I'll talk about this another time. It is objectively true that men suffer more when they're ill. If a man and a woman have the exact same illness, the man is suffering more. And we say, oh no, that's bullshit. No, it's not. Women are the ones who carry the babies. Women's immune systems are 3 times as prolific as men's. Women's immune systems are 3 times as effective at fighting off illness, infection, you name it. And women know this, and they celebrate that proudly. Well, you can't have it both ways, ladies. Because what you're saying, you're admitting that men have got it worse when they get sick. When a woman gets the flu, her immune system kicks its ass up between its shoulder blades in a matter of days. When a man gets the flu, he's rolling the dice on how long he's going to make it before he collapses. Okay, that's just how this works physiologically. Anyway, I've suffered from depression for a long time, but I question that diagnosis, the clinical depression diagnosis, because I was going through really hard times when I was diagnosed. So is that really an illness, or are you just accurately perceiving your circumstances? Right? But recently it's been floated to me that, you know, I have avoidant personality disorder, which I agree with. My God, when that psychologist suggested that to me and gave me the literature to read on it, it was like someone had just followed me around for a couple of weeks and written down details of my behavior and my thoughts, and it was incredible. Okay, and that's something I've had since I was a small child. Okay, it's something you tend to develop in early childhood. But I also was diagnosed by a psychiatrist, and yet my psychologist disagrees. I tend to defer to the psychiatrist, the one with a medical degree. that I suffer from bipolar depression. Okay? Now, everybody's heard of bipolar disorder. Okay? But what you're thinking of when you hear bipolar disorder, that's not what I have. Okay? The traditional or the, bipolar 1 is what most people think of. And it's what used to be called manic depression. That's where people have episodes of mania, where they're on top of the world, they're going 1,000 miles an hour, and, they feel invincible and brilliant, like they can do anything. And then they have episodes of depression, where they bottom out, and it's the exact opposite. It's a worse depression than what gets diagnosed as clinical depression. It's worse. Okay? Now, bipolar 2 is what I suffer from. Bipolar 1, and this is the important distinction, is a psychosis. Bipolar 1 is a psychotic disorder. All right? Features of this are your perception of reality changes to where you might see things, hear things, you might hear voices. Bipolar 2 is not a psychosis. It's not a psychotic disorder. It's a neurosis. Okay? And with bipolar 1, it verges on psychosis but doesn't get there. Whereas bipolar 1, or I should say bipolar 2 verges on psychosis, but is still just a neurosis. We don't really suffer from mania the way bipolar 1 sufferers do. With bipolar 2, we have bouts of what's called hypomania. Okay? What that means is you're not manic, you're just kind of an asshole for a few days or a week, however long it lasts. You're more likely to run your mouth. You're reckless with relationships, with friendships and things like that. You're more likely to tell off a friend for something that irritates you or stuff like that. You turn into an asshole, okay? And then it goes away. But our depressive episodes, we get with both barrels. All right, we go just as far down as bipolar 1 into depression. Some theorize it's even worse for us. Okay? It's the deepest, darkest depression in the DSM. Okay, is the depressive episodes experienced by people with bipolar 2 or what's called bipolar depression. All right? And I have come to understand some of my triggers for this. But I'll be honest with you, sometimes nothing triggers it. Most of the time, nothing triggers it. It's just all of a sudden, it's like a trap door opens under me, and I just fall and fall and fall. As dorky as this sounds, I found it personified in one of the Harry Potter movies. It's I think, the third one with the Dementors. When one of the Dementors comes into their train compartment, right? And Harry asks Ron, he's like, did either of you pass out, of Harry and Hermione? And Ron says, no, I felt weird though, like I'd never be cheerful again. That's really what it's like. And when the thing comes in and starts feeding off of Harry's soul or whatever it does, and you just see him spiraling away, like the image on the screen spirals down into the darkness, and you hear that woman screaming, and it just gets drawn out. That really kind of harnesses how it feels when this is happening. It's just like, I've talked about this before, where people ask, do you get suicidal? I'm like, yeah, I become suicidal for about 2 minutes. And then they're like, what, then it goes away? I'm like, no, then I go past it. I actually, suicidal is only, the first ring of hell. I go all the way down to the 10th. Okay? You get to a point where it's like, well, yeah, but if I kill myself, that might even put me somewhere worse, or that's going to be pointless too. There's no reason to do that either. There's an episode of one of the great series of our time, Black Mirror, called the White Christmas episode. And I'll just tell you, that is the most horrifying story I've ever experienced in all of fiction. Okay, the White Christmas episode of Black Mirror is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And I'll caution you, if you're going to watch it. But when you see what's going on and what's happening to these people, there's a guy in particular who, I'll just say, and this isn't giving really much away, finds out that he's trapped in this cabin, living out the same day over and over again. Okay, the feeling that settles into your gut when you realize what's going on, that becomes my perception of the world. It's that. That's all existence is this pointless experience that only gets worse and will continue to get worse for eternity, reaching dimensions of misery that you can't even comprehend now, and then going more and more and more, further and further down forever. And you really see that yawning chasm of miserable eternity stretched wide beneath you, and knowing there's nothing you can do but fall. And that happened last night. You know, it happened to me when I was in the hospital the last time. Actually, it happens to me every time I'm in the hospital. But I wanted to talk about this today because this is the worst thing that I deal with of everything in my life. And as you find out more about my health and my situation, you're going to see just how profound a statement that is. Okay? Which, you know, again, I went over everything very briefly in the last podcast, but last time I didn't do a gratitude segment. This entire episode is a gratitude segment. Tony and Dean, I don't know if there's any way I can express to you how vital your kindness is to me. I really don't. Brian Anderson, same thing. You're just always there. I mean, you've been there for me for years. And I don't know. I really don't have the words, which is rare for me. But this is where I enter into territory where I just, you know, my dad always told me that he thought and both parents actually thought I should go into something where I was either writing or talking to people. They say, you know, I've had a way with words for as long as I've been able to talk. That even when I was first talking, they saw eloquence in me and an expressiveness that you don't even see in most adults. And this was when I was like 2, just sputtering out little phrase fragments, you know. But in this circumstance with what I'm dealing with and having you people in my life, you souls in particular, I don't have words. Surely you're like Brian. I mean, for as long as I've been on social media, you've been there for me. And you know, my cousins, Julie, Ben, I don't know if you listen to the podcast, but I love you. You know, you're blood. And I'm so glad I have you. I have so many people to thank. You know, Wes, Andrea. I don't even, you know, Benjamin, Pass. Matt, you know, Matt, who I went to high school with. Or Matthew, I don't know what you go by now. I haven't talked to you in 20 years, you know, except for online. Lisa and Barbara and Jason. Okay, all these people that anytime I'm in pain, They're just there. And, God, I know I'm forgetting a lot of people. My brother, Eric, and my sister, Raquel. She's Raquel Capon on Facebook. My mom, Carrie. I don't think any of you really realize when I fall down into that bottomless pit with no walls and nothing to orient myself onto, I do see all of you like stars in the sky above me. Lights. Reminding me that I'm not always down there. That there is a world way up there above me that with God's grace I will return to. And anyway, and out of my gratitude to all of you and my love for all of you, if you're suffering, anybody out there, anybody hearing my voice, if you're suffering with this stuff, it doesn't have to be the same thing I've got. If things are just hurting you and you need someone to talk to, please talk to me. Please. I've said before, I have a theory about happiness. I think when you're focused on yourself, and that's what these depressive episodes do to me. It's not like they're holding up a mirror to me. It grabs my head and twists it around so all I can see is myself. It's such a selfish place. And that's the problem. I think taking the focus off of your own happiness and focusing on the happiness of others, focusing on helping others, I honestly believe that's what makes happiness possible. That when you're actually focused on your own stuff, doing stuff for yourself, I think you're just coasting. Happiness-wise, contentment-wise, I think you're just coasting. I think when you focus on helping other people, that's when you hit the gas on happiness. My mom suffers from PTSD and some other things. I'm not going to go into it. I don't want to violate her privacy here. But what I will say is, I know she suffers from anxiety. And I've noticed that whenever there's something she's worried about that's affecting her, she spirals and is completely useless to herself. Okay? Whenever something is hurting someone else, she becomes a tower of titanium strength for that person. She's like, no, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do this, and you're going to call these people, and you're going to, we're going to take care of this. And she is a rock. And that's what I'm talking about. And I know not everybody out there is a believer. But I'm going to tell you, the enemy exists. Evil and the devil are not hiding. Stefan Molyneux talked about this a few weeks ago. That old saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing man he didn't exist. That's bullshit. He's not convincing anybody he doesn't exist. We're telling ourselves he doesn't exist to excuse our own crimes. He's not hiding. This Epstein didn't kill himself. I know that it's a funny meme. But don't let it distract you from the fact that the reason Epstein was killed is because at least half of everybody in Hollywood and Washington are pedophiles trafficking in child sex slaves. You think evil is hidden? You got that twisted bitch, the wicked witch of the left, Hillary Clinton. Every fucking day on Twitter, she's virtue signaling about, oh, little girls. What did she say just the other day? If you're a little girl, never doubt that you're valuable and you can do anything you set your mind to. And because I'm not afraid of that bitch or her cohorts, I just posted right back, oh, unless they're raped by your husband, right? In which case they are, quote, trash and no one will believe them. Okay, I've kind of made the Clintons a priority on my blog. And I'm going to continue to publish as I vet more and more cases of people who, quote, mysteriously died right before testifying against the Clintons. Go to my blog, sunderthesky.com. There are two installments of this list thus far, and there are going to be more. And I'm working currently on an article that is just about Vince Foster's case. But to come back from this tangent, evil's not hidden. The Democratic Party playbook for the last 45 years has been Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That book is openly dedicated to Lucifer. The Democratic Party, who are now saying, oh, we want to be the secular party. We want to be the party of non-believers. Their playbook that they all play by. I mean, just read Rules for Radicals, and you will understand every single word that comes out of a Democrat's mouth. You'll know why they're saying it. Everything they do, you'll know why they're doing it. Once you read that book, the entire Democratic Party becomes an open book to you. And nothing they do will ever fool you again. Ever. And that book is dedicated to Satan. How in the hell is evil hidden in this world? It's not. And I'm telling you, being that he is so damn selfish and prideful, the way he and his forces will attack you is by hitting you in your selfish spots. Taking you to that place where everything's about how bad you have it. Things happening to you. When you start feeling indignant about bad things happening to other people, it doesn't make you the useless, whimpering sack of shit that you become when you're in a selfish place, like I was last night. It fills you with fervor when you think about the suffering of children or animals or the weak. That doesn't break me down into a sniveling little bitch like last night. It makes me want to beat the shit out of something. It makes me want to rescue those people. It makes me want to do something for them. And I know that's how you feel. That's part of the reflection of God in you. When he says that he made us in his image, that's what that means. It's a lot of different things. It's, for one, we have free will. No other animal on earth has free will but us. Or the ability to reflect, or the ability of circumspection, self-analysis. But part of it is that wrath at the evil. Everybody out there is your brother or sister. And when we see injustice and abuse, it pisses us off.
So when you're feeling that way, when you're wallowing in self-pity, and I honestly think the way out of it is to shift focus to other people. Do you know why I haven't killed myself? Because I've been there several times in my life. All I have to do is think about my family. And it snaps me out of it so hard it takes my breath away. Literally. The closest I've ever been, it was shortly after my wife left me and I was homeless. I remember sitting there in my car and I knew exactly how I was going to do it. Like, I'm going to drive, there's a place in Akron, not far from here, called the Y Bridge. Which is this bridge that's over dry land, and it's a good 60, 70 feet up. Maybe more. At my weight, I said, you know what? I'm just going to drive there, I'm going to get out of the car, and I'm going to jump off. And as soon as I had that thought, my mind flashed to my mother, my father, who was still alive at the time, my brother and sister, my nephew, who was just a baby, and my cat. Because I had just gotten home. I was working at a telemarketing place, and I had just gotten back to where I was parking my car. I found a place, and I thought about my cat. She's waiting for me to come get her, and once all this works out and I get into this apartment that I was trying to get into, and she's waiting for me to be with her again, where we could be she's my little roommate, and all of a sudden it was just yeah, I remember it was like all the air got sucked out of my lungs, and I was like, what am I doing? And I think that cold water down the spine, I think that was from God. So when you're hurting, I want you to reach out in your mind. Think about the people you're going to hurt if you do something to yourself. Your death isn't something that happens to you. It happens to everybody who loves you. Anyway, that's all I got for right now, and I just wanted to share that while I'm in this little pocket of clarity. But thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.